Yep. All right, everyone. Well, thanks. Thanks, Chris, for getting this set up, and thanks everyone for giving us some time. I've got us slotted, so we have plenty of time here. But is there a hard and fast stop at any particular point in time, whether 30 minutes, an hour, anything I need to be aware of as we go through this, just to be conscious of the time?
Well, we're budgeted for 90 minutes on our end, so we should be good for an hour and a half.
All right, great. So before I dive into this, I want to make sure I answer all the questions you guys might have. Is there anything in particular right off the bat you want to make sure that I address as I go through this?
Elizabeth, do you want to just maybe give a brief overview of what we're looking for here?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically looking at rolling out a new texting policy for the environment to make sure that we are fully compliant with what we need to be for the regulations. It may be a phased rollout, but we're looking at both the BYOD and possibly a company-provided device, so we're looking at both options there. We do need to make sure that we are ingesting into SMARSH, which are our archiving platforms, so we are interested in the capabilities around that. And we do have both U.S. and international users that we have to be cognizant of. So if you can talk a little bit about how you deal with the international versus U.S. rollouts, that would be helpful.
All right, perfect. So what I'll do to begin with, if it's okay with you, is there's two different ways that I can log in. I can log in either as an administrator, which would be somebody in the home office function that has the ability to oversee and has oversight over everything. And then the other way to log in is, of course, as a user. So I'll start by logging in as an administrator so you can see some of the functions and features on that side of it. And then I'll actually talk about some of the things we have coming up here as well. So most of the time for this, I'm going to spend in the computer interface. Keep in mind that when somebody signs up to use the tool as a user, they can use obviously the application on their phone, or they can use the computer itself. But for the sake of just ease of looking at, I'll spend most of the time in the computer interface, but I will jump over to the app so at least you can see that and see what that experience is like. So let me log in here as a group administrator. This is it. So as you'll see, we do have multi-factor authentication. When somebody signs up for the first time, you actually have a choice to have your multi-factor authentication use an email address or use a cell phone number. Most people use a cell phone number. So when you log in as an admin, this is one of the things you'll see once your account is set up and you actually have people signed up to use it. So I'm going to go here to the group setup piece. So when you sign up when your organization signs up, the administrator has the ability to go in here, and it's actually the very first thing that we do with the administrators, walk them through this portal. Now there's more to this than what I'm going to go through, but for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to hit some of the highlights here. In here is also where you can set up the SMARSH integration. So the integrations can be set up with archivers, for example, can be set up by the user, or they can be set up by the admin. In your case, in your example, as is the case for most broker-dealers, the admin wants to set that up so the user can't change it. In this administrative portal is where you'll set up the integration with SMARSH. Our integration with SMARSH is, we have two different types of integration with SMARSH. We have a journaling integration where we'll send the data over so it gets captured inside the email system within SMARSH, and you can search and sort and everything pops up as just like anything else, but you can search for an SMS, but it goes in through the email system. The other way is through our API integration where we are actually a content type within SMARSH. So very similar to what you might experience with some of the other, archiving features you have going over there where you can click on a button and it's only the text messages because it's a true content type. So it's up to you how you want us to send the data to them. Either one is just fine with us. So here's where you can set up the basics for the admin. Now keep in mind, we set up one admin. That admin can set up other admins as well. So that's one thing you have the ability to do here. Reporting, you don't really need to worry too much about this particular piece. If we're going to be sending the data over to SMARSH via the API integration, because otherwise this would become very helpful using the journaling side of it. So a few more things that I'll highlight as I go down here, then I'll show you how you actually set up a user. So Inside of our system, and I'll show you that in just a minute, we have a virtual business card. So the virtual business card is all the same information that's in a standard user's business card. Of course, this one is even more easy to use because it's built into the phone. You can send it out and it gets saved into somebody's phone instantly. As with a business card, right, you don't want people getting their business cards approved and then changing some of the information in there. You can turn on what we call V-card compliance or V-card approval. And what that means is if somebody changes their virtual business card, and again, I'll show you that in just a minute, but if somebody changes it, you'll get an email at this particular email address, whatever one you put in here, that says, hey, Derek Gerard just changed his V-card. It needs to be reviewed and approved. This way I don't get my information approved and then I go and change my email from Vanguard to Hotmail thinking you're not going to notice. Group messaging.
Can I ask just one quick question?
You certainly can.
And if we go back to it, that's totally fine. But I'm just curious, you know, the firms who are using the journaling integration with Smarsh versus the API integration, like, are you seeing any kind of common reasons why a given firm would choose one over the other?
No, historically, we didn't have we didn't have the API one for quite a while. Smarsh said there was really no reason to have it. So it was actually Smarsh's suggestion to us to simply use the journal. We've had a number of larger firms come aboard that asked us to get the API integration just so it's as simple as a content type so they don't have to sort and search and filter things out. The other time or the other way that people do use the journaling method is for some firms that are a lot smaller or for single individuals who utilize Smarsh for archiving, they may not want to pay Smarsh an extra fee on a monthly basis to have their information archived. And so we actually can just journal the data directly to a user's email address themselves. And because it hits their own email, it gets captured in the Smarsh system. So some firms have chosen to go that route as well. But most of the larger firms, I think, moving forward are going to be using the content type just because it's easier and more seamless.
Thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
The application then would probably work more like a native application then on our phone. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yep, and I'll show you that here in just a minute.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so group messaging. The admin and the organization has the ability to disable and or limit group messaging. We can talk here in a little bit when I get into the user side as to why I think you shouldn't eliminate it completely, but you do have the ability to limit it. So if you say you don't want a message going out to more than 20 people, you can certainly put that number in here. Just a quick note on this particular feature. Our system allows for a group message, but keep in mind it's sort of a misleading title of it because we don't actually allow group messaging. So for instance, if I'm a user and I want to send a message to 20 people reminding them of an upcoming seminar, our system actually sends an individual message to every recipient. So our group messaging feature, and you can't see me, but I'm using air quotes, that feature really only just helps save me time so I don't have to hit send 20 times. I can send it to a group of people. It's an individual message to every single person, but it just saves me the time of having to do that. And again, I'll show you that here in a few minutes. Mobile calling, you can make phone calls directly from the application. This is a feature that we're testing here, so this is turned on here, but this will allow a user to make a phone call both from the app itself on the phone or from their cell phone number. And that actually might be a useful feature for the company-provided device situation. So this particular feature might be really useful for the company-provided device so that any phone calls made to a client or a prospect of some kind is actually use the cell phone number instead of the MyRepChat number. This will all make a little bit more sense when I log into the actual advisor side too. I just want to give you some of the ideas of some of the things you can customize. You can add your Vanguard information, the logo, the color, that sort of thing. Consent is another feature in here that's important. There's 5 different ways that you can do consent. And so some organizations have said, you know what, Derek, we don't require the client to opt in or to accept consent of any kind to send and receive text messages. Our default system is a negative consent, meaning somebody can always text the word stop and be opted out. If they do that, the advisor can't even start typing a message, let alone send one. You can choose to add on top of that positive consent, meaning that the client has to actually accept. So from a compliance standpoint, you can type a message in here that says, hello, Mr. Client, please respond with the word accept to opt in to or to give consent for text messaging. You guys can craft that message. If the person responds with the word accept, it unlocks them, and now you can freely exchange messages back and forth. You can also choose the disclosure link option. We have some firms that have said, Derek, we want the disclosure that gets sent to somebody to be very similar to what's in an email footer. And as we all know, the email footer disclosure is a lot bigger than a text message will allow. So some firms have created a link that they put on their public website or even their private website that a person can click in their message and it'll take them to the disclosures. We've taken this one step farther, and we actually can make this so it only sends the disclosure on the first message of the day. So my first message to a client today will have the disclosure link. The rest of them up until midnight will not. And then if we exchange messages at 8 o'clock in the morning, the first one will have that disclosure link. The rest of them until midnight will not. So that's another option that you have.
Hey, Derek, just real quick back on that opt-in, opt-out. You said if user opts out, if they send that stop message, we can't even start typing a message to them.
Yes, there's nothing you can do. If somebody texts the word stop, it grays their system out inside MyRepChat. So I don't even inadvertently type a message. And if for some reason I still can't transmit the message. I can't send it at all.
Okay, and that's on the app, on the phone, and the website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, when they text the word stop, they'll get a notification saying, and we can do this here in a minute because I'll show somebody who's willing to send a couple of messages to me. When they do that, they'll receive a message back saying you've been successfully opted out. To opt back in, text the word start.
All right.
So they know what they need to do.
And I'm sure that, or go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say real quick, they can still send messages to the advisor. So they can still or to the user, they can still transmit a message in, but the user on our end cannot transmit a message out.
The other, just quick question I had, so, and we can also, with the disclosure link feature, how you mentioned that we can have that, accompany every message or just the first message of the day. I'm guessing that we can also make it so that maybe that would accompany just the first message ever to a given client, but then from there, we wouldn't need to show it. Is that flexibility available?
Yeah, it's not built in that way, but since we already have it built, it would be pretty easy to make that just a one-time message. But that's probably very similar then to this positive consent. But yeah, I'm sure there's a happy medium there that we can come up with that just makes it easier to send a link once and then never have to send it again.
Okay.
Pretty easy to do.
Thanks.
So just a couple more things here that I want to highlight. Down at the bottom, billing. Right, I don't know exactly how the structure is there, or how you would want to do things if you're going to have the users pay for it themselves, or if we're going to bill the home office and the home office, bills reps or bills users. That's up to you. But you have the flexibility there to bill them directly. We can bill them directly, or we can bill a centralized person or department, and then farm it out from there. Then once you've done all of these things, it's very important. Once you've done all these things, a link is created. And so for your organization, what would happen is this is the link that gets shared. So when you tell people to sign up to use MyRepChat, this is the link they'll use to do it. And when they sign up to use MyRepChat, it's very simple. It's only a couple of steps. Once they do it, you'll immediately get a notification, or whoever the administrator is will immediately get a notification that, Derek Gerard just signed up. If you go over here to accounts, you'll see him. So you'll see that information right in this system of somebody that signed up. You'll be able to see everything they do. You can change their status if they leave the organization. You can change them from active to inactive. You can delete them if you would like. Make sure that we already have everything archived with Smarsh before you delete, but you can certainly do that. You can see who has access to log in. So in your case, I don't know if it's going to be wholesalers that use it, but you can grant internal and external wholesalers access to the exact same system. We just create a separate set of login credentials for that second person so that they're not sharing credentials. So you can see everything that goes on inside a user's system because they're signed up underneath your organization. And because they sign up underneath your organization, they're defaulted into all the rules that you've already set up.
Is that a requirement?
That make sense? What's that?
that a requirement for like say someone who we're sending a text to someone or the recipient, and they have to opt in, and then they have to go through and create this account?
No. So this isn't the client. This is the user. So
Okay.
this would be an employee there, or or an advisor, whatever sort of system you're going to be using this in. It's going to be the actual user employed with your organization that's going to have this, not the actual other person, not the client of any kind.
Okay, thank you. I got confused when you said wholesaler.
Is there an ability, so let's say, so we've got kind of different divisions within our companies, and the perhaps like the parameters with which they can interact with clients, or or maybe what they could send to them could differ. Is there the ability to customize it to where you've got your organization's rules that all users sort of will automatically have to adhere to by virtue of kind of how we set this up, but like can that kind of differ depending on like maybe which like division of our firm they sit in? Like is there only sort of one, I guess the rules that would apply to our organization would kind of have to apply to all users. You couldn't customize it based on like a given division that they're in.
No, so the answer is yes, and here's how I think you would want to set that up. And so the way I think I would do it would be to create what sort of used as a loose term as sort of a master administrator, meaning somebody who can log in and toggle between different administrative accounts like this, right? So let's say that's, and I'm making this up, let's say that's Beth Cook, for example. Beth Cook has the ability to log in, and from there she can log in, she can toggle to Vanguard wholesalers, Vanguard Department X, Vanguard Department Y. And then each one of those divisions would set up their own rules so that their division has their own set of parameters. So rather than trying to cram it all under one, just create different buckets of people based on the department and the organization.
Awesome. Thank you.
Does that make sense? Hopefully it does.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yep. And then here, of course, is where you establish.
Sorry, Derek. I'm going to interrupt real quick. It's Beth. As we're asking questions, can we let Derek know who's asking, just so we also know on our side who's asking these different questions? Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. And here's where you can set up the archiving relationship. So, and I'll point this out in the other section. It's just easier to see. But again, if we set up the archiving relationship directly with SMARSH at the administrative level, nobody as a user can change that or alter that in any way. So just keep that in mind, that once that's set up, it can't be edited by the actual users. So I'm going to log out. As I log out and log in as an actual user, any questions come to mind? No, you guys have asked a lot, which is good. All right, so if I'm a user logging in from a computer, this is what I'll see. Let me jump over to the application on the phone, just so you can see what this looks like. All right, so I have an Android phone. This is what it looks like on my phone. So my standard messaging app is down here. MyRepChat is right here. Multi-factor authentication, so I can use my fingerprint. Everything I do on the phone is instantaneously mirrored on the computer. Same thing if I do something on the computer, it'll automatically show up in real time here. So if I go into my last message with Wade, you'll see all this information down here. All the buttons down here in the bottom. Sorry, it's opening that up. But all the buttons down there in the very bottom, I'll walk through what each one of those are on the actual phone or the computer app. But the one thing I'll highlight is the phone on the very bottom. And again, if I keep moving it, it keeps doing that. But the phone down here in the bottom, because we have that telephone feature enabled, right from the app, I can choose to make a phone call from the MyRepChat phone number, and I'll talk about that here in a second, or I can actually make a phone call from the mobile number, so my actual cell phone number. The differences between the two is that it's coming from the mobile number, it's not being recorded, and it's using my cell phone number. If it's using the MyRepChat number, we actually can record those phone calls so they can be stored as well. And then
Is there a way to disable that so that the user cannot call using their mobile number, that they can only call using the number provided through the MyRepChat?
Yes, that's that little toggle switch. We just turned it off.
Okay.
Yep, so if we turn that off and you hit this button right here, this doesn't even show up.
Okay.
Because keep in mind, the one thing that's pretty unique with the tool that we have here is that you can actually text message enable or SMS enable a landline phone number. So if somebody has a desk phone number, an office number that they're currently using for phone calls back and forth with clients or whatever it might be, we can actually text message enable that so the text messages come from the exact same number. So if I go all the way out here real quick, because this thing locks up on me all the time, I just want to highlight two things here. One is the calculators. You can choose to turn this off, but it is one thing that's different in the app. This isn't inside the computer version. This was built in here because me being an advisor myself, I know from time to time I'm in a conversation that I wasn't prepared for and I didn't have all the information at my fingertips, and somebody says, what's it going to cost to send Johnny to college? And sometimes you just don't want that conversation to come to an end. So we built in some of these calculators. Again, given your use case, you can certainly choose to turn that off and it doesn't even show up. And then the only other thing is contacts. You can import contacts directly from the phone. If I go down here, I can import directly from the phone. So it'll pull up all my list of contacts in my actual cell phone and I can pull those over into MyRepChat. Otherwise, everything I'm going to show you on the other system you can do in here. It's just going to be easier for me to show you there because I think it's easier to see. Any questions on this before I get out of it? All right. We do have a app available for Android, iOS, and Windows. Oops, wrong one. This one. So real quick, again, I'll just take a quick step back. When I talked about before, when you sign up to use MyRepChat, if you have an existing phone number, landlines work, some voice over IP systems work. So some will, some won't. We can just, if it's a voice over IP, we can find out if it will work or not. We can text message enable that. So the same number of people are already using to call, you can now send and receive text messages from. That's kind of there's a huge opportunity there, I think, even within home offices or office settings to be able to use that, because people already know your number. Now they can text the exact same number and the messages still come through. And the beauty is if it's used internally, it's full end-to-end encryption as well. If I go up here as I sign in, now for this particular account, this is a separate number. If somebody doesn't have a landline phone number, then part of the setup process, step 2, is they'll pick the number based on the area code they want. So they'll type in their desired area code. For me, I pick 612. A list of numbers pop up. I take the one that I want, and boom, that's my number. But this is the virtual business card. So everyone's system has this by default. This isn't extra. This isn't an add-on. This is something that's built into everyone's system. So this is that information that I told you before that, again, is my business card. So all of the information that I have on my business card is now here in a virtual environment, and I'll show you why this is so important here in a minute. Archiving, again, if you set this up, it's already done for them, but you'll see Smarsh is on here. There's actually a few more that haven't been added to this list, but Smarsh, for your sake, is already on here. And then do you guys use a particular CRM? The organization uses a CRM?
Not at the moment, I don't think so. Or
there is this is John Keefe. There are a few CRMs that are currently being used, but we are going to be switching to one primary.
Which one are you guys going to be switching to?
Dynamics.
Okay.
Microsoft.
So, yep. So this one right here, the 365 works for the Dynamics, so it's already built in there. So when you make that migration, it's there. There's a number of other ones that are in our pipeline to get the integrations built with. Keep in mind the way our integrations work is pretty interesting. So what happens is, let's take Office, for example. The way it works by default is once I build the integration, I can get my contacts. So what that means is once the integration is made, I can open this up. It'll allow me to pull in my contacts from the CRM. So it'll give me the list of all my contacts. I can pull the ones in that I want to pull in and leave the ones out that I don't want to pull in. Once they're in, our system by default will send those conversations back to the CRM to get stored in the notes. Meaning if Beth and I are having a conversation, it'll take that entire conversation in real time and send it back to the notes section of the CRM. Now, some people don't like that happening real time because if, you know, Beth and I are exchanging 10 different messages during a day, that's 10 different entries. If you don't like that, you can turn off the real-time notes. And then instead of sending them real time, we'll send them at the end of the day. We'll take the entire back and forth conversation, time and date stamped from midnight to midnight. And then after midnight, we'll send it over to the CRM to get logged in the notes. I'll stop there.
Does that also work with Siebel?
With who?
Siebel CRM.
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to check. Okay. But if it doesn't, if it's just an additional CRM, we just have to make the phone call to find their API information. Any other questions on that? Again, we've got a list of, I think I've probably got 6 or 7 more that we have the API information for that we just haven't gone live with. So there's always a good reason to add some more of these. But if you don't have, if we don't have the integration, you can always import from a CSV or you can add them manually. Contacts here real quick, the groups. I'll show you why this is important here in a few minutes, but you can have groups here as well. So let's say, for instance, I'm doing an event on August 10th. I've created a group and I've added all these different people to the group. So I'll show you this feature again here in just a minute, but I want you to see where the groups are. Smart messages. So one of the most popular components to this entire tool is a smart message piece. So I can schedule messages for clients. I can schedule messages for groups. I can schedule messages one time or recurring. So here you'll see an example of July 1st. There was a message that went out to a bunch of people. I've got more messages coming up on July 10th. I don't even know what the ones are coming on July 10th. These are ones that I scheduled far in advance. So here we go, just different ones that are going to a group. So the way our system works is I can schedule a message. If I go up here to create, I'll show you what I mean, scheduled message. I can pick the contact. I can pick the date, I can pick the time, and I can pick the frequency. So sometimes I want to send a message that's a single message as an appointment reminder. Other times I want to send a message to people to remind them of the newsletter or remind them of a quarterly meeting or whatever it might be. I can do that right in this system. I can set it once and forget it. Same thing with birthday messages and things like that. You can do that right here from this system.
Hey,
I can create,
Chris Burwell. Sorry, just a quick question. Does that take into account opt-in and opt-out at the time of sending?
Yes, if they haven't opted in, then I can't send them the message.
Okay. And if they've opted out, obviously it won't get sent to them at all, right? Either.
Correct. Yep. So what happens, just so you guys know, if you turned on positive consent and somebody gets added to the system, there's a button right here that just says send consent. It's the only thing I can do. I can't send anything else other than that message, and they have to respond with the word accept. So accept is sort of like the unlock code. They have to send that message back. It's a great question. You can create templates. So this is one of the things that's going to save people a ton of time. So I'll show you some of the templates that I have in our system. Again, the use case for what I've created is generally advisors dealing with clients. Your use case might be a little bit different, but you can create a lot of templates that you're going to want to use, whether it's a one-time send or something you might want to schedule for later use. So again, events pages, there's a ton of stuff, whether it's an actual message or it's a link. There's a ton of things you can do, right? First text message to somebody you want to send, thanking them for their business. You can send them to your social media pages, right? I don't want to try to type this thing every single time. But there's other ones that I've created, like Know Your Client. So I've created a survey that's Know Your Client, that before my meeting with my client on an annual basis, this message gets sent to them. And you'll see, if I click on it, that as they're walking into the meeting, before they even walk into the meeting, right from their cell phone, oh, the survey's ended, never mind. I only scheduled it for so long. But there's a link that they'll get on their cell phone that they can just answer the simple questions, which are all the exact same Know Your Client questions that every client has to answer anyway. So you can do all that stuff directly from here. You can also save and store documents, which might be really helpful from a wholesaler perspective. Because I know myself as an advisor, I ask questions all the time for certain documents, and they have to be saved and sent over to me as a PDF. But you guys have a lot of that information directly on your website. So you might not need to save and send over a PDF if you can just send over the document, and it takes them directly to the website where you want them to go because there's more information and more resources. So there's a ton of stuff you can do with these templates to save yourself time. And then auto responses. Again, given your use case, this can be a really helpful piece as well. Again, thinking of myself as an advisor, if I want information on certain models or certain things like that that I might use with Vanguard, you can create auto responses. So if certain words come in or a certain message comes in from a user, it'll automatically respond or automatically reply with what you want it to reply with. And I'll show you this here in just a second. So does somebody have their cell phone sitting there with them? They don't mind sending me a text message.
Sure.
All right, so send a text message to this number right here.
Okay. Point the number out to me again. All right, gotcha.
Yep. Right there.
And for those interested, this is John Keefe. Spelled your name wrong, but I think I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I don't. I actually don't. Type the wrong number. All right. 1612 260 8143.
I'm going to try to go over here. So the message came in. So you'll see, because I'm logged in on the computer, I get this alert here. I'm going to try to see if I can show you on my phone. No, this thing isn't gonna load for me. So let me go back over here real quick. So the message came in, but did you get the auto response?
I did.
So I created an auto response up here in the smart message that says if I get any message from an incoming text from a number that I don't know. So obviously I didn't have your number saved, so you're an unknown number. If I get any text, I want it to respond with this, because let's be honest, this is the first thing I'm going to say to a number I don't know anyway. So that automatically came in. What kind of phone do you have?
iOS. Apple.
Perfect. If you don't mind, send the word V card. So I'm going to type it in just like this, but text the word V card if you don't mind. The letter V, C-A-R-D. And let me know when you get my business card.
I've got it.
So what happens is sometimes we have people that say, my clients already know my number. They don't want to know another number. And the reality is this. All that matters today, nobody knows phone numbers anymore. People only know contacts saved in their phone. So the most important thing we can do is help somebody get a new contact in their phone. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. So take one of your wholesalers, for example, if they're standing out in a room at a conference doing a seminar, they tell the entire audience before we get started, take out your cell phones and text the word V card. So everybody in that room text the word V card like you just did, and they automatically get my contact information. So for everybody that's not, I'll open this up because it'll open it up in a, so here's what it looks like on the computer, but it sends out automatically all of my contact information to be saved directly in the phone of the person who received it. So they can do it that way like you just did, but if you're already in my phone, let's say I've brought you over from my cell phone, I can just simply hit this button and it'll send it to you. So you can do it the way you just did it, or I can do it this way and send it out to you as well. Here you can see attachments, so you can send and receive images and attachments directly from here. So all of those are stored attachments inside my system. Here's where you can use my templates. So all those templates that are in the smart message, I can send those directly from you or to you from our conversation. I don't have to go back into the smart message to do that. I can schedule messages for you as well right in here. And if I had any messages scheduled for you, it'd be down here at the bottom. emojis, right? It's amazing how many people want emojis, but emojis are in here. Not only are emojis in here, on your cell phone, of course, you have your standard emoji keyboard. On the computer, you have this, which is all the same emojis. The most important thing is when we send this over to Smarsh, if I send you the clown face, when it hits Smarsh, it's still a clown face. It doesn't separate it out. It keeps it fully rendered. The V card is here. And yes, you can make phone calls directly from the computer if you'd like as well. And the last thing I'll show you real quick is up in the details. So let me change the name so I know who this is. It was John, right? I get that right? I assume I did. All right, so John is in here. I can add you to a group. Oh, sorry. I can add you to a group if I want. So for instance, if you're in a particular office or you're a particular kind of client or you're a Bucks fan or whatever it is, I can create as many groups as I want and I can add you to these groups so I can use it later on. I'll also see the activity. So this is important to understand how receptive and responsive this particular person is to texting back and forth. I can see the activity of this particular person. And as long as we have the data in the system, you can run reports directly from here for this particular contact as well. Refresh this just so the name changes. All right, so this is the advisor or the user's system. And again, multiple people can have access to one. We just create separate login credentials for every person, so we track everything different. So we do have, situations where an advisor uses their phone more often and the staff person uses the computer. It might actually be very similar for internal, external wholesalers, things like that. Internal home office people, this is a really simple way to communicate back and forth because it's just up on your computer and you'll be alerted every time there's a message that comes in. So I'm going to stop talking there for now and see what questions you guys have.
Hey, Derek, this is Crystal. Just to clarify that last point, so if I needed access to this through my computer and then also access to it through my mobile phone, is what you're saying that I'd have kind of two separate logins?
No, same login.
Okay, it would be the same login.
Yeah, so once you have access to it, it doesn't matter how you log in, whether you log in from a computer, your tablet, your phone, it doesn't make any difference. What I was saying is if you take an advisor, for example, and again, that's generally who uses this most often, you take an advisor who has their staff person. Well, their staff person is going to be the one that schedules reminders and all that stuff. And so what we don't want is that staff person to have to share login credentials because obviously there's a lot of reasons why we don't share credentials. And so we create under the admin side a separate set of login credentials specifically for that admin so they can log in using their own credentials but still log into the same system. And then everything that person does is tracked separately because it's done being using a different set of credentials. So if there's ever a question with who said this or who said that, we know exactly who said it at what time and all that good stuff.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Yep. All right, what other questions?
It's Crystal. I'll throw one more at you. So can you give us an example like of some maybe bigger firms, maybe that are, somewhat similar to us in terms of size? Like what types of rules you've seen them set up or not even, they don't even have to be like the same size, but like broker dealers and whatnot. Like, can you give us an example of like the types of rules that you typically see get set up on the admin side to sort of, kind of limit or restrict or enable or disable certain types of activities?
Yes. So we've had a majority of firms have gone the way of making it as least or as less restrictive as possible. And here's why. If I go back to my phone, and again, it's frozen, so it's not going to show you anything else. It's not going to allow me to refresh it. Remember, there's two different messaging apps I have on my phone, right? I have my standard one, and I have my MyRepChat one. What you don't want to do, and what I think, my opinion as a compliance guy and advisor myself, is what you don't want to do is make this so restrictive that I just use the other one. And that's what's going to happen. If you make it so restrictive, they're just going to go, you know what, I'm going to use the other one. We really want them to use this one, good or bad. We want them to use this one. And so a lot of firms these days are going the way of the disclosure link, having the disclosure link sent out once. This wasn't available. We launched this only a couple months ago, and it's been a huge hit. So they've gone the way of the disclosure link, having it only sent out once a day. So that way they know the client gets it every single day if they text every day. But in terms of limitations, we really don't see it. We don't see firms put a lot of limitations on. So we've had, I think, one firm disable the calculators, but for the most part, firms don't limit the group message size. The V-card compliance, I think, is just a good thing to turn on, right? Make sure that I'm not out here, changing this to a number or an email address that's not approved. That's just a good one to do, but that doesn't really limit anything. But outside of that, I really don't see on a large scale any major limitations that people put on the system.
Thanks.
Derek, this is John Keith. Can you enforce a disclosure message?
Can you enforce a disclosure message? What do you mean by that?
In other words, so say I initiate a conversation with someone. Is there a disclosure message or anything should be on the bottom of that message? Then that should be on every message.
Yes, you can. So that's part of the disclosure link. And we put it in there as a disclosure link because that's how it's most often used. But you can just certainly have something typed in there, right? So I take my chiropractor, for example, says to unsubscribe, text the word stop. Very similar. You can do something very similar to that on every message if you want. Yep.
Okay. And then what about wiping data from the actual app? Do you have the capabilities to do any of that?
In terms of the admin or the user themselves, or
the admin?
So the admin, yeah. So again, the admin can go in and delete the system. So the way our system is set up, just to give you a little structural perspective, we utilize AWS. So AWS Glacier is where every ounce of information is housed. Every single user has their own database as well. So every user's information is in a siloed bucket, right? It's theirs, it's only theirs, and it's only theirs in that bucket. So that information goes in there every single time there's a message transmitted or not. We send the data directly over to Smarsh every single day. And so once it's sent to Smarsh, we can delete it immediately from our system, but we generally don't. We generally keep it for 90 days. And the reason we keep it for 90 days is so that there's a history. So if I log into you as a contact in a week, that it's not blank. So we keep 90 days just so there's at least some history of a conversation. But once that information is transmitted, it gets captured automatically in the Glacier database. It gets sent over to Smarsh immediately. So if I am the advisor or the user, the admin can go in and hit delete whenever they want, and it'll delete the entire thing. So yes, you have the ability to do that. Now keep in mind, we don't store any information on the user's cell phone. So in that BYOD environment, we're not storing any of these messages on somebody's cell phone. So if I, as a user, leave the organization or get terminated, the admin just simply goes in and changes my status from active to inactive. So my login credentials don't work anymore.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. In terms of U.S. and international, I know that was brought up. Again, because of the way we're set up and the fact that we use AWS, we have international capabilities. We just have to make sure, and I'm confident you guys are obviously aware of this, things like the UK, right? The data can't leave the UK, so we'd have to use databases with AWS Glacier within the UK for that information. Same thing here for the United States, same thing for Canada, stuff like that. But our systems are global, so it doesn't make much difference where they are. We have the ability to expand that way.
Do you have the ability to do that partial port of existing DID numbers internationally as well?
I don't know that we've tried that internationally. The answer is maybe. The way it works with being able to enable a number is we just need to know what the number is. And so what's kind of interesting and frustrating all at the same time is sometimes you'll have phone numbers from the exact same carrier, two numbers from the exact same carrier. One will work and one won't for a myriad of reasons. So if there's an example of a number, we can ask. Again, we've never done that internationally. We might not be able to.
Okay.
Good question, though.
What's the licensing model look like for this?
So the way that we do this, and I'm sharing this with Chris a little bit. Chris, did you pass this out to the group as well?
I don't believe the whole group received it yet, no.
Okay, no worries. So the way that we do our pricing is there's two different ways that an organization can do it. One of them is the subscription method. The subscription method means that the organization guarantees not a single person is going to use the system. And how many users would you guys have? Potential number of users. Not actual users, but potential. How big is the potential?
When you say potential, are you just talking on this is Beth, on the Vanguard side or just the client side as well?
No, not the client side, because the client side wouldn't matter. They're not
the crew side.
Yep. What would that number be?
We could have upwards of 17,000.
Okay. So for your organization, there's two different ways to do this. One of them is the subscription, right? So the subscription says, Derek, we have no guarantee that a single person is going to sign up. In that environment, we would bill the actual subscriber themselves when they signed up. So underneath here, if I scroll down, they would be asked to put in their billing information, right? So for an organization that size, it's $15 a month is what we would charge them. On the other side would be the enterprise option. So the enterprise option says, Derek, here it is for 17,000 people. We're going to sign everybody up right off the bat, regardless of whether or not they actually sign up to use it. For an organization that size, it's $4 a month. So at $4 a month, we would bill that to the organization every month for everybody. And then generally speaking, the way organizations do this is they turn that around and they bill the actual users maybe $10 a month or $15 a month and keep the spread for themselves. And it also makes the break even a lot smaller than everybody. Does that answer your question?
It does, but does that $4 per month on the enterprise side, does that decrease, or increase based on the number of people in the company?
No, so the way we do it is we don't do any sort of sliding scales, like if the first 100 people pay this, the second 100 people pay that, or anything like that. We don't do it that way because, let's be honest, the guy who signs up first gets a very different deal than the guy who signs up last. So the way that we do it is basically based on the potential number of people. If we make the assumption that everybody's signing up right off the bat, no matter which model you go with. And we know darn well that's not going to be the case, but we basically give you the best break point there possibly is, even if there's only one person that signs up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. It's just, I don't like, as again, somebody myself who's in the business, I don't like the idea of, the first 100 people will pay $15 and then the second 100 will pay 14 and 13. And then it just becomes kind of a confusing mess of who got a better deal and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Derek, this is Beth. I'm just, I have to drop off in a couple minutes, but I just wanted to ask maybe a little bit more clarification, or if you can talk a little bit more about using the landlines and enabling them for use with the app. If there's any restrictions we might run into, or if there's any concerns we have, if it's a recorded line on our side. Just some information around that I think would be helpful.
Yeah, great question. So the way that it works when we SMS enable a landline number, and again, this can work with 800 numbers as well. The only thing you keep in mind is you can't send pictures through an 800 number. So the way it works is when you go through the process to SMS enable a landline number, it's a really, really simple process. But the only feature that we take for the landline number is the SMS feature. So we don't touch any of the calling features for a phone. So take, Beth, your phone number in your office. All the phone calls and all the phone call features stay the exact same because we don't touch any of them. We just take the SMS feature of the phone number, bring it to us so that all the text messages, instead going through Comcast or whoever it is, they reroute and they go through us in and out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. It's a pretty simple process. When somebody does that as part of the setup process, what happens is a phone call gets placed to that particular number. So again, I'll use Beth as the example. If you said, I want to use this number, you press the submit button, the phone call gets placed to that number. There's a 4-digit code, I think it's 4-digit, a 4-digit code that's given to you. when you answer the phone, you type that in, and that verifies that, yes, you, in fact, do have access to that phone number, and you're not setting up your next door neighbor for something. And then from there, it can take, an hour, if even that long sometimes. You can start texting from that number.
Hey, this is Howard. I'm an attorney here. I also have to drop in a few minutes, but I had a quick question. I think I kind of had to be in and out, unfortunately, but it sounded like this has a feature where it sort of transcribes messages that they're phone calls that come in.
At the
or
current
is I
time,
misunderstanding?
No, at the current time, we don't do the transcription part of it. We do the recording part of it. So we can record the phone calls in and out. The transcription side is something that we're working on, but as you know as well as I do, transcriptions, the problem is half the time they're wrong and you have to spend a bunch of time editing the transcription. So that's the downside of the transcription.
Okay, so actually my question is actually about recording, not about transcription, so that's perfect. What do you get? Do you guys have like sort of the consent piece, recording consent built in some way? I may have missed that part, I apologize, but where you make sure you get before you get consent before you start recording or anything like that?
So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's been one of the reasons why we didn't have recording built into this thing for the longest time. It's because you had to rely on the person to say, hey, this phone call may or may not be recorded.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to rely on people to remember that.
Yeah, so what's interesting is there's every other organization that does something similar to what we do, who has the recording, does not make that statement before the recording. And so as we've talked with more and more firms that are changing to us, they said, listen, we don't have that now. We're not requiring it. And so our system doesn't require it either.
Okay.
Not to mention, that's kind of an interesting thing to try to build in there without it being like a robot voice. So one of the things that we are testing right now, and this is the recording, right? So right after I hung up from this phone call on this particular day, it automatically sent to me. But one of the things we're testing right now with some advisors is the ability to record a phone, because in the United States, it's not a requirement to record a phone call. But making it so that every phone call is recorded. And then if I'm the advisor, you're a client, and I hang up, that the system will say, Derek, do you want to retain the recording? Because sometimes I don't, but other times you and I might be talking while I'm driving in the car, and I really don't have the ability to write that down, but I don't want to forget.
Yeah.
So we can turn the recording off. Again, in the U.S., it's not a requirement to record these phone calls like it is in some other countries. But right now, if it's turned on, it'll record all the phone calls and send the recording directly through your system.
Got it. Okay, and there's no automatic consent piece, but that's consistent with the rest of the industry.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
So, as an end user, Derek, how do I access the application?
As
the App Store or to download it?
Yeah, so the end user being a Vanguard person who wants to sign up to use it?
That is correct.
Yes. So once I've created the account, you can create the account online like I showed you here. Once you create the account, just go to the App Store and download the app, and you can log right in. We don't make it available right now to sign up from the app, but once you create the sign up from this system, and the admin can actually do the sign up for somebody if they really wanted. But once they sign up, which only takes about a minute and a half, they can download the app, and then they never have to log into this ever again if they don't want.
Okay.
And again, we have the app for iPhone, Android, as well as Windows.
Right. And does it work with the Apple DEP program? You know?
I don't know the answer to that. I can ask the developers. What program was that again?
DEP, Device Enrollment Program.
All right, I'll find out. Who was that asked that?
John Keefe.
John Keefe. All right, John, I'll text you the answer since I know.
I was going to say, you've got my contact.
Yep, I'll find out.
Okay. And then what about working with any of the, are there any limitations on the mobile device management applications that it works with?
Not that I've ever been made aware of.
Okay.
The only thing we've experienced with an Android, I had this myself because again I have an Android. Is I had a Android some security app that I downloaded for extra security, And we realized, and this was, gosh, this is almost 2 years ago now, so may or may not be the case any longer because it hasn't been brought up by anybody else. But this particular one that I was using was stopping any pop-ups that I got. So that was about 2 years ago on an older Android phone. But otherwise, it's the only time we've ever experienced it when I experienced it. So, but that was just a sort of a security thing that was turned on my phone, was stopping pop-ups so I can be alerted.
What about device limitations or our operating system limitations?
There shouldn't be any, because again, if it's an iOS device, it's the standard app. If it's an Android, it's the Android. If it's a Windows, it's a Windows. So there's no device limitations or carrier limitations. That's another thing that's important. We don't have carrier limitations because of the way our system works.
So you're saying that the app works on iOS 8, and we're currently on the version is out there is much higher?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because we've got. I was having a call with somebody on, was it Thursday of last week, who's got Android version like 6.0, and I think my phone is 9.0. So the only thing you got to be mindful of, and I don't think iOS has this issue, but sometimes Android does, where certain Android old software versions don't give you the same number of feature choices, like choosing your own ringtone and stuff like that. But in terms of the app itself, it works just fine.
Derek, are there any other, like, I guess within the admin features, like, is there anything else that you would want us to be aware of in terms of like tools or parameters or settings that maybe, can be, like that we would be able to implement on our end, almost from a more of like a control perspective?
Yes. So there is one. You didn't see it, and I meant to bring it up, and I forgot to bring it up. And lucky for me, my developers aren't sitting here in front of me staring at me, so they can't yell at me and tell me to not say this. But one of the things that we are working on is this data loss prevention piece. So one of the features that you will have as an admin, and I would imagine by the end of the week it'll be live, is the ability to put in certain keywords, phrases, things like social security numbers, credit card numbers, account numbers, so that if an advisor or a user tries texting that information out, it'll automatically flag it. And you can have it so that it will flag it and stop the message from being transmitted, so that it'll alert the admin that, hey, Derek just tried sending out a flagged, something that was flagged, right? And you can log in and see that it was a social security number, and you can reject it, write the reason why it's been rejected, so that I know as the advisor why that message was rejected. So you can have it flag them and stop them, or you can have it flag them and still let the message go through, but still be alerted that, something was sent that still hit one of your flags or your filters.
Awesome. And like, does that flag kind of feature, or, whether it's an alert or a flag and then a stop, like, is there the ability to maybe set that up with other items as well? So if other like keywords or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's 100% customizable for you. So if there's certain things you want to make sure that don't get sent out, or if they do, you're alerted, that's 100% customizable.
Thanks.
Now, Derek, in the bottom right corner, I see this help button. Is that training and education? Is that what's available there for your end users that you just take over the app and just start using it for the first time?
Yeah. So I think this is actually, I never hit this one. This is actually on the website, so never mind. If I go here to support, so there's a quick 10-minute video to walk through the system for the very first time if somebody wants. There's always the support. You can email, you can call, and then down at the bottom you'll see we also have these self-help guides online. So the way I tell every organization that signs up with us, especially if it's going to be an organization the size of yours or any organization that has real size to it, is don't sign up for it and just sort of send a blast email out saying, hey, if you guys want to text now, you can. Because as you could tell as we went through this thing does a lot more than just a standard text message. And so generally speaking, what I like to be able to do myself, again, because I'm an advisor and I'm familiar with the industry, is I love doing group demos and doing webinars just like we're doing right now, and inviting as many people as we can to join it, to see how you can use it, things like that. So If we do a number of those, coupled with, this page here, support pages, the recorded webinars and demos, generally speaking, that's a pretty good way for people to understand how to use it. But generally speaking, most of the issues people run into is just because they're not quite sure, how to do one thing or another. We had one last week where they were changing something, but they weren't hitting the save button. So obviously it wasn't saving. But there's plenty of information and resources available.
Great, thank you.
Yep. What else?
Derek, one other question. I came in at kind of like the end of this part of the conversation, so I think I missed it. But you were talking before about something that had to do with the Amazon Glacier.
Yep.
Can you talk more about where that fits into this? Because I know, obviously we would archive using Smarsh most likely, but can you just kind of refresh me on what you were speaking to there?
Yeah, so our entire system is built utilizing AWS. So if I'm a user, I'm with Vanguard in some capacity, and I'm using this within the Vanguard system, I have my own database within AWS, and or within AWS Glacier, right? So all the messages are encrypted in transit. All the messages are encrypted in that database, and I have my own database. So before and after we send any of those messages over to Smarsh, they're all sitting in that database for me and under my name only. So that's important for you guys to understand, because that's worm compliant. All that information is secure in that environment. We send it over to Smarsh, again, using the API integration most likely. And then again, generally for 90 days, we'll keep that information in that particular database, and then we'll delete it because there's no reason for it to duplicate.
Got it. Okay, so the software itself, like the program, isn't necessarily going to live like on-prem with us. We're kind of logging into a database, and it's obviously supported on AWS in this case. Have you seen any companies that are similar to us that are just using AWS Glacier as their retention system, and therefore it's more just, I guess, transitioning it from like one database within Glacier to the firm's database in Glacier? Have you seen that at all?
No, I've talked to some firms that are going down the path of going to the cloud-based archiving because of the way AWS Glacier is built, but I don't know off the top of my head of firms that have actually done it just yet.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to know.
And we do have some relationships. The beauty of AWS Glacier is we can archive that data for somebody if they want us to. So if your organization said, Derek, don't even bother sending it to Smarsh, they're going to charge us an arm and a leg. And I say that from experience. They're going to charge us an arm and a leg to store text messages. Can you store it for us? The answer is yes. We can keep it right in those databases. So that's very easy. We also have relationships with other archivers that have given us white labeled versions of their tool. We can store that data there as well. So it makes it very easy for folks that maybe want to make a change or don't want to send more data somewhere to have those choices.
Interesting. Okay. And just also circling back on the template feature that you showed, would there be like a way to kind of designate, so obviously in certain situations, those things would need to be kind of pre-approved. Is there like a way to kind of designate that a given template, has been pre-approved within the system? That way folks know that it's available for use, or would we kind of just have to rely on the fact that if it made its way into the system, it already went through that approval process?
That's a great question. That's never been brought up to have a template pre-approved. I'm confident based on whatever variation of that you would like to see, that we could probably get it built for you. But I don't. The thing is that it's just a tough thing. Again, me being a compliance guy and an advisor myself, I think about it from the compliance side, and then I also flip over to the advisor side saying, hey, this is just to save me time. It's a message that's post-reviewed, but I completely understand why you would bring it up. But right now, we don't have it in such a way where you pre-approve a template.
Okay. And then what's the support model? Like if we were to bring this on and maybe we're experiencing like some technical difficulties or something like that, what's the, I guess, support model between Vanguard and your company to ensure that, any issues that were uncovered were addressed in a timely manner?
Yeah, well, you'll have the customer support individuals that you can reach out to, again, through this or through the email, through the phone call or phone number, through the email. And so generally speaking, the way things have been reported to us in the past by organizations like yours is a simple email to this. Everyone gets this email. And so when something comes in and there's an issue, again, sometimes it's really minor, like my Android isn't giving me the alerts. Well, there's a very quick fix with that Android. Other times, if it's something more significant, the developers get this as well, so they're alerted right off the bat. So in terms of anything that you guys might need from a support stance, we've never had any issues with that in the past, and it's always worked pretty well. So I wouldn't expect there to be a whole lot of issues with you. And the beauty is, to be honest with you, if you guys are experiencing a real issue, you wouldn't be the only ones experiencing it. So chances are, if there's something that gets brought to our attention that we know needs to be fixed or something needs to be tweaked or it's not working right, we'll send communication out to the field anyway, let them know this was just brought to our attention. This is what we're doing to fix it. It normally takes us, we're pretty quick at getting things like that turned around. Yep.
So no open case process where I would open up a case with you guys.
Yeah, you guys wouldn't do that. We would open the cases internally. So if you reported something to us, and again, I'm not on the developer support side, but there's a system that they use where they can open those cases and make sure they get closed out and that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned earlier, you're talking about the access to the app, the actual text messages, stuff stored, I guess, out on AWS. Now, I understand that they're sent daily to Smarsh, but say that someone on our side needed to access to an individual's messages almost immediately. What options do we have?
So there's a couple of different things. So the journal relationship we have with Smarsh is one that's sent daily. One of the advantages of the API one is it's real time and it gets threaded on the back end at Smarsh. So they do go real time to Smarsh through the API daily through the journal. Otherwise, the other way you can do it as well is you guys can always log in as the admin and see these conversations. So this information is always available to you. The second something goes through, it immediately gets captured and logged. So again, the beauty of it all being in worm format. So for instance, if I wanted to go run a report real quick of my conversation with John Keefe, I can go down here into details and run the report. Change the date so it's today. If I wanted to run the report, so let's say, for instance, Vanguard terminates me as a employee today, and you want to make sure that I didn't do anything I'm not supposed to do over the last, 2 weeks or whatever it might be, you can go out here and run a report for the entire database as well. So I can run it here for the entire database, or I can run it by contact right in here.
Excellent.
Good question. What else? Any other questions you guys have?
I think we've kind of pestered you quite a bit.
Yeah.
Trust me, we get these questions from every firm, but normally we're not fortunate enough to get them all in one call. It's 3, 4, 5 calls and 17 emails. So I prefer this.
Well, why don't you tell us what you think we haven't asked based on what you've heard from other people, things that maybe we should be considering?
The only thing, honestly, that you guys haven't asked is how long does it take to get set up?
That was the question I was about to ask. I swear to God.
Yeah. So in terms of setup, the setup process is really, really, really very simple. So it doesn't take months, weeks, days to do it. It's very simple. So if an organization like yours says, Derek, we want to use this thing, how do we get set up with the administrative portal? If you guys wanted to test it out even, this is the same process we would do. So even if you said at the end of this call, Derek, we want to play around with this thing, can you set this up? This is exactly what we would do. We would create your administrative login account. We just need to know who's going to be appointed as the default administrator right off the bat. And then that person would have a phone call with somebody on our customer support team to walk them through the administrative side of it, setting up some of the rules and that sort of thing. And then from there, that link, that dedicated URL that's created, you can sign people up immediately. And once they get signed up, their system is blank, of course, right? But they can integrate CRMs, they can create V cards, they can text, they can do everything. So it's that simple. That's the one thing that was very important to me, was that when an organization wants to sign up or a user wants to sign up, that it doesn't take all this extra time, because then you kind of lose the excitement. We wanted to keep it simple, make it very simple and turnkey for an organization to use.
How open are you guys to running some type of test for
Say
us
that one more
to try
time?
it out? How open are you to having us test this out?
I'm extremely open to it.
Okay.
If you tell me who you want to, if you want, just tell me who you want to be the administrator, and I would imagine for the days out, we can have the administrative portal set up by the end of the day, and you guys can start signing people up. Generally, in terms of the trial like that, we don't charge anything to you to do that. Most organizations will take advantage of that for a couple of weeks, test it out, create accounts, send messages, create rules, make sure the rules are working. And that's generally how that goes most of the time, but that's very common.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I've exhausted my database questions.
That's fair. You're going to think of 3 more as soon as we hang up.
Probably.
All right, anything else? All right, well,
I think we're good.
Great. I'm going to stop the recording. And Chris, again, once it's done loading, I will send it over